Good morning. You can still feel free to enter in. We are just going to be very respectful of everyone's time. I'm Monica May. Thank you so much for having me. I'm from Monica May Communications. And yes, I am the same person that used to host the Tom Joyner Morning Show. We're doing this now. I love doing these webinars, and especially during Black History Month, and especially with the Orlando Magic. And I do want to welcome everyone here this morning. My time with the Orlando Magic began back in the 90s when I worked for 102 Jams, and it was during a time of Penny Hardaway and Nick Anderson and Shaquille O'Neal. And it was very easy to have access to the players from a radio station standpoint. I moved on to another market, Houston, Texas, and I thought I could walk into the Houston Rockets office and get the same kind of, okay, great. I work for a radio station there too. Nowhere like the Magic, nowhere like Orlando. And no, it wasn't as easy to get them to do things in the community as it has been with the Orlando Magic. That's why I'm just so grateful to be a part of what we're doing here this morning. In celebration of Black History Month, we have a webinar series that we're kicking off today. It's called Walk With Us, and today is the first in that series. We hope you'll find the series insightful and educational as we focus on diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion. Throughout this series, every Wednesday morning throughout February, the Magic will bring community leaders and industry experts together to discuss a variety of topics of social and economic change. In addition, the Orlando Magic will celebrate Black History Month at the February 27th game against the Utah Jazz. You can learn more by visiting our website, which is orlandomagic.com/walk with us. We're excited to begin the series today with our guest from the Orlando Magic. Please join me in welcoming CEO Alex Martins. Yes.
Thank you, Monica. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Head Coach Steve Clifford.
Thank you, Monica.
Yes, and we've had some history. Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Mr. Isu Ma'at.
Thank you, Monica.
And guard Michael Carter Williams.
Thank you, Monica.
Yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll have the opportunity for you, our audience, to ask questions via our Slido platform. You can use your phone to scan the QR code that we're showing you right now, and you can add your questions right in there. So that's going to be fine. Slido.com, and when it asks for a code, it'll be #WalkWithUs. Alex, I want to start with you this morning. How would you characterize the organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's the buzzword right now.
Yeah, thank you, Monica, very much. I would start by saying that the Orlando Magic remains deeply committed to diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion, and to work collectively to promote peaceful and necessary social change. We do that by joining our players, our coaches, our staff, along with our other teams in the NBA in these ongoing efforts. The Magic organization has always worked to create a culture where everyone feels welcome internally and within our community. We strive to have everyone to feel valued and appreciated, and we're all are treated with dignity and respect. In addition, through the support of our ownership group, the DeVos family, the Magic and its affiliate teams have formed an internal social justice task force comprised of Magic, Solar Bears, Magic Gaming, and Lakeland Magic staff members. The task force will continue to move forward. Each of the team's commitment to race, gender, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the task force addresses issues of inequality, focusing on racial, economic, and gender bias under 3 pillars, the 3 pillars of community, workplace, and business, to improve the Magic in our organization's reach into the Central Florida community and beyond. So it's through these 3 pillars that the groups will focus on support and impact in our community through diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and economic empowerment for businesses. And the areas of interest that we're focused on include police reform conversations, voting education, full staff town halls, an organizational assessment of where we stand, from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, and also our assistance of small business, particularly focused on the Black community and women-owned businesses. So as you can see, it's part of our fiber, it's part of the fabric of the organization, and it's really something that we focus on, and it's very, very important to us, and that we partner very closely with our players and our coaches and our staff on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. Those three pillars are community, workplace, and business. And those are the buzzwords that make a good team part of the home team, and that's our community here. Coach, let's go to you. Every home game, you've made the decision to host a social justice game changer. Can you talk a little bit about that program and why racial equality is important to you?
Yes, thanks, Monica. I mean, that's an initiative that we organized with Linda Lehman Gonzalez and with ISU as a way to celebrate and honor local leaders. Everybody, we're going to be doing politicians, people from grassroots organizations who dedicate so much of their life to bringing more equality to Orlando and making it a better place for all of us. I think that my role, and you may know this, we have an organization within the NBA coaches, and Brian Stevenson is our consultant, and he told us many months ago after the George Floyd murder, you guys are coaches, and you be coaches, work with local politicians, local leaders, and get to know the people, the grassroots organizations in your area, and then try to help the players become more educated about how they can help in your city and move forward that way. And that's what we try to do. We have good relationships with Desmond Meade and FRRC, with Dr. Randy Nelson from Bethune-Cookman, with Miles Moraine and Let Your Voice Be Heard, with Dr. Jeremy Levitt and the Stono Institute. And Mike's been a huge part of that. And we're trying to get involved through our players, through our organization, with as many different aspects of equity, of equality that we can, to make Orlando a better place so that everybody has an equal opportunity, for success as they get older. So I think that right now, one of the things the pandemic has hurt us in terms of how much we can get out there, how much our players can get out there. I think Mike can speak to that. We were able to do some things, but that's how I see my role. And that's one of the reasons that we did that initiative.
Mm-hmm. As you and I were talking, as we were setting up, I said that I came here in the 90s, and back then the players were always out and about in the community. Nick Anderson, Shaq, Penny, you just knew that they cared, really. And so it's good to have that come back. And sorry that it took a moment as a Black Lives Matter moment or movement to make that come back into fruition, or in vogue, I should say. But I am so glad that you all are doing the pillars and that Coach Clifford, you're out there. Isu, as the newly minted Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, what do you think is the overarching objective of the organization's DE&I strategy, and what are your top priorities for 2021?
Thanks, Monica. I want to just start by repeating this kind of ancient proverb that wise sage advice to go to the people, listen to them, learn from them, start with what they know, and build on what they have. So as I thought about myself coming to the organization, and as you alluded to already, I understood that there were already many extraordinary initiatives taking place. And part of what I needed to do was just integrate that as part of an overall strategic framework for diversity, equity, and inclusion. The other side of that is aligning the vision for diversity with the mission and the values and the strategic priorities of the organization, which also includes making sure that our workforce over time reflects the diversity of our marketplace. Alex alluded to the fact of our commitment to working with diverse suppliers. And last but not least, making genuine efforts to stimulate demand for our content and our products in diverse communities, which requires a thoughtful strategy in terms of what that value proposition is that we're offering those communities. In terms of specific initiatives, our approach at this moment is to build organization-wide cross-cultural fluency so that we're all using the same language and we all understand the value of diversity, what it means to us and why is it important to us. The second step is to do a little deeper dive in terms of embedding what I call DEI infrastructure. So what are those goals going to be? What are the metrics we're going to use to evaluate our progress? And what kind of programs do we need to put in place? And that also includes auditing some of our processes to make sure that, for example, from a talent recruitment standpoint, that we have a diversity-friendly process. And last but not least, it is then going out to the community, showing up in this genuine way and talking about what that value proposition is that will make the community want to hang out with the Magic, because we certainly want to hang out with them.
Genuine is the key there. Thank you very much, Isu. Michael Carter-Williams, how you doing this morning?
Good, you?
I'm doing fantastic. You and your teammates have such a powerful voice for social justice and equality. How have you seen players come together and how do you see them continuing to move forward?
Yeah, obviously we have a loud voice that reach a lot of people. And, during this time, I think it was real important that we use that voice and that we continue to use that voice. Just from, being in the bubble, everything that we did in the bubble was huge. And, I think the most important part about it, it's a common conversation now between us. We've gone on Zoom calls with, leaders in the community, by ourselves, people whose voices, aren't really heard. And we take the initiative to, at least let them speak to us so that, we can project, their feelings to the media and to the world because they know that we'll be heard. So, we've done, such a great job. We've done so many different things. Like Coach said, we've met with different leaders trying to do different things in the community. Coach and I, we've gone to seminars. Everyone's kind of, gone in their own direction of how they want to help. Aaron's big into the education and Mo's big into the voting. So, we've all gone our, own alleys on trying to, help, what's going on. And it's just been a great process overall. It's really great to see that, young guys like us with a big voice actually care and are willing to put the time in to make change.
It makes a big difference. It does. Thank you, Michael. Alex, back to you. Can you talk a little bit about the NBA's efforts, including the newly formed Mba Foundation?
Sure, Monica. So, I would start by saying that, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our league's focus on it, and our league's focus on, in particular, the contributions of Black leaders, in our country and in our communities, is not something new for us. With partnering with our players and our coaches and all of our teams, we've celebrated Black History Month for years, in our league. Martin Luther King Day is one of the tentpole days, on our league schedule, with a half dozen or so national televised games centering around celebrating the life of Martin Luther King. So, with programs like that and with focus like that, this is not something new. Having said that, the bubble did, as Michael, alluded to and pointed out, give our players and our coaches in particular an opportunity to put a focus on social injustice, particularly in light of the terrible events that happened earlier this year and prior to that. And so, as our players and our coaches and the league and the teams came together in the bubble, and we're utilizing that as a platform for messaging of social change. There was also a desire to really create something that was substantive that could have a major impact in communities around the country. And so our players and our coaches and our teams and the league came together and created the Mba Foundation. And each of the MBA owners has committed to donate $1 million a year for 10 years. So that's $30 million league-wide, $300 million over the course of that 10 years. And we've created a foundation with a board that includes players and coaches and owners. And we are going to utilize those funds to empower individuals in communities around the country, particularly in the area of economic empowerment. And so we've already given out, several grants of several $100,000, I believe in one case, close to $1 million, to organizations around the country that are focused on empowering the Black community when it comes to economics. So that's through mentoring programs. That's through, giving seminars and training on how to interview. Also working with companies in those communities to focus on diverse hiring practices and giving the opportunity to promote a diverse workforce as positions come about, in businesses, et cetera. Really, growing the economic empowerment, particularly in the Black community. So that's what the focus of the foundation is. We're working with the league and some community organizations here in Orlando to submit grant applications to the foundation, and our intention is to bring some of those dollars back to the Central Florida community so that we can really fund programs that bring about economic empowerment in the Black community. And we look forward, as a league, to continue to work with our players and coaches and owners to advance the mission of empowering the Black community, particularly when it comes to growing, an economic opportunity for them.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very well put together. Alex, stay right there. And we've talked about this a little bit, but how does DE&I align with the mission, the values, and strategic priorities of the organization?
Well, it works hand in hand, in my opinion. Our organization has always been one that community is one of our 4 core values. And as you alluded to earlier, in your experience with us in the early days, back in the early 90s, and I guess it just starts to show how old I'm getting, Monica. I was here at that time too. But having said all that, it's always been important for us to give back to our community, to help to grow our community, to improve it. And our programs have been vast and focused a lot, primarily on children and the Paramore community, quite frankly, and in helping to improve the primary Black community in Central Florida. So it works hand in hand with our mission. We're stepping it up in this day and age, based on the need to substantively improve situations of social injustice. And part of that stepping up has been the hiring of Isu. Isu's just on board with us now a little over 30 days. And, he comes to us with incredible experience in the DE&I space, having worked throughout his career, and, has related experience in sports in having done it when working for the United States Tennis Association. And so I think that is another element that underscores the importance of DE&I and how it works with our mission and our values. And again, the players and coaches, stepping up their efforts. Coach Clifford, quite frankly, as much as any coach that we've ever had, in our organization, has stepped up in terms of his outreach in trying to make an impact on social injustice in our community. And he's been hands-on. He's been very involved in many different programs, and it just underscores, again, to your point and your question, how important it is for us to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a focus on improving social justice into everything that we do in the organization.
Mhm. All right, since we talked about you, Coach Clifford, how does social justice intersect the business of basketball, and how can the team contribute to change while also focusing on winning?
Well, I think that, for all of us, like Mike said, we've done a lot of starting with, trying to educate ourselves. We've had team calls with Monique Worrell, our new state attorney. It was terrific. Mike is always the leader in our group in terms of being prepared with questions. He has a relationship with Monique also. We had a good call with Sheriff Mina, over some like local policing issues. So I think that that's part of it. We've done calls with Desmond Meade, where he educated our guys, all of us, not just our guys, all of us, about voting, the importance of voting. So I feel like that we've done different things. I'm in conversations now with Senator Bracey about some education initiatives that I think our guys would be interested in. But I think what we want ultimately, Monica, is two things. We want to do our part to keep the conversation going. And then we also understand, and Mike speaks well about this, we want change. We want to be part of real change. That's where the grassroots organizations come into play, guys like Desmond and Dr. Levitt and Dr. Nelson and Miles Mulrain, because racism is a huge problem in our country and in our area. And the systems do have to change. And there's things that we have done, supplies to local students going back to school in the Paramore area. We did with Let Your Voice Be Heard, things like that. But we also want to be working with local politicians. Like for me, Mike and I have talked about this. I'm a former teacher. My brother is a high school principal. I think that Black history should be taught in every school in the country. Not just the inner city schools, every school. I know that since George Floyd, one of the things that Brian Stevenson has done for all the coaches, he sent us literature that in order to read. I've learned a ton. And I think that we should all be, not just doing, one day on Harriet Tubman, learning more about Black history. It would be good for everybody in the country. It's actually, I believe, a state law in Florida. It's law, and yet it's not done. So there are things like that that we need to get involved with, not just programs, not just photo ops. We need to change policies. We need to change laws. Some of that starts with local politicians being involved in voting. I'm a huge fan of Monique Worrell. I think she'll be great for this area. And those are the other things. I mean, things have to be changed. Policies, laws, and the people making them become a big part if we want to really make positive and sustainable change.
This is very good to hear. I hope that you who are viewing are taking some notes as well. Michael, let's come to you. What would you tell others, and specifically young people, how they can get involved and how they can help move along change?
I would say to start in your own community, start with the people around you. I think the most important thing is that, you talk to the people that are close to you, because, you never know, you never know how their views are. Your friends, your family, it may not be, in a negative way. They may not have, the worst views in the world, but, they could be confused. They could be not educated up to, really what's going on. So getting the people around you to be on the same page of what's really going on and what really needs to change is really important. Me and my friends, we've talked daily, all the time about what's going on and how I can make a change, how I can use my voice, what we can do in our own community to educate people, how we can, express how important financial literature is to the Black community. A lot of things that, you can do without, taking up too much of your time or thinking that you're not going to make a huge difference. It definitely starts small, with your surroundings. And then as, you go on in your life, I think you can expand. But for young kids to really take the time to learn about what's going on, like Coach said about, about schools that should teach Black History Month. And, him and I talk about this a lot. And, I think a really big thing, about Black history itself. And I think a really big thing is to, teach Black history, but also teach it up until today about, kind of what's going on. And I think that's really important. We can always, a lot of people learn about, slavery and Harriet Tubman but, kind of, okay, well, after the Civil War, how were Black people affected? It kind of stops there, right? Like, oh, Black people got their rights and they were able to do, okay, well, how was, the economics for Black people played out? If just up until, what's going on to right now is really important. And I think if kids and people can understand that, it would help a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's funny with the pandemic, it is very hard to stay present, but there is a way to be present through connecting. So whether it's a walk, whether it's a Zoom, whether it's something, just letting people know that you care is really important during this time. And that's through your presence. So this is good. Isu, I want to come to you, and then we're going to be getting close to wrapping up. And thank you guys so much. This has been really good conversation. Fostering, Isu, a culture of inclusion, respect, and belonging seem to be a top priority for many organizations, especially now. Why are these values so important, and why do some companies simply fall short?
Monica, they're important because at the end of the day, these are universal values, I would argue, right? I mean, who doesn't want to work for a company where they feel valued, where they feel respected, and where they have that sense of belonging? It's part of what inspires discretionary effort, right? But it's also part of what inspires you to want to bring I like to say, bring your best self to work. Some people say bring your whole self to work. I'm not sure people want me to bring my whole self to work, but bring your best self to work is probably better. A better way of looking at it. But look, there's also seismic demographic shifts, transgenerational changes Michael Carter Williams just alluded to, that is bringing these issues to the surface in a way that they really haven't been there in the past. And so I'd like to think that we have some momentum at this particular juncture that we haven't had in a while. And so, look, this is also part of emotional intelligence, right? And business is learning that these soft skills matter, right? Because at the end of the day, people matter first, and people come to the organization, whole, right? They have emotions, and what's happening in society also impacts how you show up on a daily basis, what your state of mind is, right? And so these are all the reasons why it matters. And I could go on for days about more reasons why it matters, but the reason that it fails in some cases, in my opinion, is that number one, we must understand that diversity and inclusion is a business process. So it's tied to business imperatives, not just a moral imperative. As Coach alluded to, it's not just the right thing to do, right? It's how we move the needle across the board. Change is also hard. We all know that. There are systemic issues. Again, Coach alluded to this. There are systemic issues that continue to, as someone said yesterday, be a slow moving virus behind the scenes in many organizations. And we see that playing out across the landscape of our country. But at the end of the day, we all have to be part of being the change you want to see in the world, as Gandhi said, right? And so, look, champions adapt. The companies that get it and that can integrate this business process into standard operating procedures will be prepared to lead in the future. And companies that don't will be, a thing of the past, really, if you follow most of the research.
I agree with you on that one. I want to stay with you, Isu, and ask you one last question. Um, what advice would your current self give to your younger self about advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion and standing up for social justice?
Wow, that's a loaded question right there, Monica. But I'm going to start by saying patience. This has been a long struggle, right? And there are times, you mentioned George Floyd, or Coach mentioned George Floyd, where this conversation gets elevated and intensified uh, in a way that everybody has to pay attention. You're forced to pay attention. If you turn on the television, on a daily basis, you're forced to pay attention. So you can't be on the sidelines, being asleep at this point. And yet, the approach has to be measured. The approach has to be balanced. The approach has to be strategic. As a former mentor of mine used to say, it's chess, not checkers. And so you have to have that kind of approach. It has to be patient. You have to be patient. Here's another thing. Temperament matters as well. There's a way that we can talk to each other and we can have a very fruitful dialogue. There's a way that we can talk to each other and it'll shut the conversation down immediately. And to me, the difference between the two is judgment, right? Is the inability to listen empathically to both sides. So that's another piece of advice I would give my younger self, is to shut up sometimes and just listen, right? And then, last but not least, we have to work together. No one person, no one leader, no one organization is going to be able to bring about the change that Coach spoke about. We have to work together. We have to find ways to work together. We have to, in the 7 habits of highly effective people, seek to understand before being understood. These are probably, and you know what, and let me add what Michael Carter Williams said as well. This also has to be a contemporary conversation. It also has to be a conversation that's forward-looking, not always backward-looking. And so the sum total of all those things, I think, are part of what I would be telling myself. Because when you're young, close your ears, Michael Carter Williams, you want what you want and you want it immediately. But there's a way to do things. And over time, with wisdom and guidance, and great coaching, you learn that there's a process to this. But I would love to know what Alex and Coach would say to their younger self.
With patience comes that all. Well, then let's go to Coach Clifford. Coach, do you need me to repeat it or do you know it?
Well, I would say this. I think that I'm probably like, in terms of this subject, I think I'm probably like a lot of middle-aged white men, in that I've never been a racist, but what I've also never been is an anti-racist. I think that what George Floyd did for me, and I think for a lot of people in this country, is, I think because of the pandemic and because of the pace of our life, it slowed down, is I'm sitting in my, apartment by myself. And when I saw that, and it's happened in my lifetime over and over again, it just struck me a different way. And, the next night for me, the Lloyd Pierce, the head coach of the Hawks, called everybody. We had 30 NBA head coaches, and we had an incredible talk. And one of the things that was said by Steve Kerr, which again struck a chord with me, was he said that, racism is a major problem in our country. And you could say that more than anything else, it's a white man's issue. And more than that, white men with money, because we need all of these things. We need conversations. We need people working together. We need to work with other groups. The other thing is, and Michael knows this, as Dr. Levitt told us one night when we all met with him, is people that have money, it takes money. It takes money, just like the NBA program of that Alex was talking about. And so for me, I'm in a different place. I want to be part of this. I want to be part of the change. I'm in a place financially where I can contribute that way. I don't have the platform that the players do, but I do want to be involved in trying to help them organize their efforts. And we want to be out there. Like I said, we don't want to be just doing photo ops. You know, this all-star game, one day doing this. We want to do things that are going to help Paramore, Pine Hills, Orlando, the country. And we have resources available to us. So hopefully we can do that.
Good deal. Good deal. Alex, same question. What would you tell your younger self about advancing DE&I and standing up for social justice?
Well, Monica, I would tell my younger self, educate yourself first and foremost. You know, I grew up in the New York, New Jersey area, had many of my friends that were Black, and we had a great friendship. But I look back on that today and I say to myself, I had no idea what they go through, you know, and I have no idea, you know, the inequities that they were feeling. And how they were treated in certain circumstances. We never had that conversation, you know, and I never educated myself at that time. And quite frankly, you know, like Coach Cliff, you know, I'm not a racist, but I, until recent years, haven't done a good job of educating myself on racism. So, you know, I would say that first and foremost, I tell my younger self, you need to educate yourself on really what's going on, you know, in our country when it comes to racism. And then secondly, I would tell my younger self, you need to do a better job of listening, listening to your Black friends and what they're going through, and the lives that they're leading, and that being part of the education process. And, you know, I've really focused on that, you know, in particular in the last year and few years of really educating myself on these issues so that we as an organization can get more involved and, to Coach's point, you know, really help, you know, substantive change in our community as opposed to, you know, just utilizing our platform to speak out against it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So far, we've gotten patience, temperament, togetherness, judgment, forward looking. As a middle-aged white man, as Coach Steve calls himself, and he says, you know, I wouldn't say that I'm a racist, but I've not done anything to be anti-racist. Have more conversations, work together, and be part of the change. And Alex is saying, educate yourself, educate yourself. Can we say that again? Educate yourself and listen more to Black friends and other people that have gone through any kind of situation. So with all of the elders on screen having spoken, let's come to the young jit, all right? Mike, what would you tell your even younger self? You know the drill, you know the question.
Right.
Let's hear from you. What are you doing?
Yeah, you know, I think it would be a combination of things. I think, Alex, when you said educate, was you know, a really strong word for me because, you know, growing up, I felt as though many things were wrong, right? Like, you know, I'd go through experiences, you know, being Black in a white community, and I knew things were wrong, and I would, you know, speak up for it, but it would not be in probably the most educated way. And to, you know, put my feelings to words, you know, is something that, you know, I think that I would tell my younger self to do better, no matter who it was. You know what I mean? I could have been a kid, you know, putting my feelings to words towards adults, you know, to other kids that, you know, treated me in a certain way. And also having more conversations with my friends, you know, about their feelings, you know, about, you know, how them being treated a certain way really affected them. And, you know, it's obviously it's a little bit harder when, you know, you're so young, but to see the kind of things that my mom went through, you know, when she was, you know, when she just had me, and, you know, going to try to find housing and being turned down because she was Black, you know, realizing kind of what that really means in the grand scheme of things in this world, rather than my own personal, you know, issues, you know. So, you know, I think creating more conversation with, you know, the people around me, trying to actually, you know, learn and not just, you know, taking a class and you know, my history class comes up and it's, you know, we're learning about Black history and being like, okay, Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, and, you know, this and that, to actually apply it to, you know, kind of what's going on in the real world, and, you know, really take the time to learn like I do now.
Mhm, mhm. You guys, this couldn't have been better if we had planned it. I'm telling you, this is a great way to open up a discussion for Black history. If you don't mind, we're doing really well on time. I'd like to let the last 3 minutes be given to our audience. So via Slido, we're going to take some of your questions. Now for Michael Carter-Williams, how does it feel to have the support of the entire organization as well as the NBA behind you in these matters, which is not the case in all leagues? And I like to give kudos where they came from. That's from Dan Savage.
It feels amazing. You know, I think it's probably the most important thing, you know, that can happen. You know, people can, you know, Black people can fight for, you know, injustice, you know, all they want. If they're not getting help from, you know, white people and everybody else, things will never change. And to have such a big organization, to have, you know, Orlando's organization with the rest of the league is huge. And it just shows that, you know, a lot of people care about social injustice. A lot of people care about change in this world. And for them to have our backs is a really big thing.
Mhm. This is anonymously going out to the coach, and thank you very much, Michael. And actually you too as well, Mike. What progress, if any, do you think has been made since the bubble? And that's coming from Mike Simon at the Florida Daily. I used to work with Mike. Hey, Mike.
Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, you know, I think our voices I think our voices are heard. You know what I mean? I think for a long time it was trying to get people to listen to us. And I think now we can really start putting things to action because our voices have been heard. You know, like Coach has mentioned, there's been a lot of things going on in the league that they're doing with the social inclusion, and I think there's a lot of, you know, work still to be done, but I can definitely see change in the world for sure.
And I would say that, you know, to get to specifics here, and again, Mike's been a big part of this. So right after the bubble, and Mo was involved with this, along with the organization, you know, having Amway open for voting
Thank you for that.
was very positive for everybody. You know, we've been involved with Stono Institute with Dr. Jeremy Levitt. You know, Mike was part of a group of guys that met with Dr. Levitt, who gave an incredible, brief history lesson that everybody, all of us, should hear. And we're working with Stono, as is the organization, as is the city. We're also working with Dr. Randy Nelson, and we're actually trying to organize with other professional teams, franchises here in Florida, to try to set up a scholarship fund so that we can, you know, Mike and I went to a meeting in Paramore with Dr. Nelson and some local leaders. And one of the things that you read about and he spoke about was, you know, part of policing and the issues that come in Paramore is you don't get younger officers who are comfortable in that setting. So what we're trying to do is set up scholarship programs where we can find local leadership from places like Paramore and target guys where we can help them go to school, major in criminal justice, and then hopefully come back to kind of fortify you know, that aspect of our law enforcement here in Orlando. So we have a lot of things that we're trying to do. And I think once the pandemic goes by, we can be more out there and get more involved.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Coach. For Alex, and you know what, you tell me how we want to do this. I know that Coach and Mike had to bounce at about 11:45, and we're at that point now. I just had 2 more Slidos. We can stop if you want to, but here's one that would speak to me, Alex, and if you can, please just give me this one. It says, this is anonymously written to you, Alex. Can you speak to some or any pushback from sponsors or supporters to the initiatives of the Magic regarding social justice and how we responded?
Well, the response from our sponsors has been tremendous. They want to walk with us on this journey of improving, social justice. As a matter of fact, Isu, the majority of his time over the course of these first 30 to 45 days that he's been with us has been meeting with his counterparts at our sponsors, to really talk about how we can work collaboratively together to institute significant change in our community. So I would say to you that the response from our sponsors has been tremendous. They want to partner with us, and they want to work with us to help institute substantive change in our community.
Thank you very much. And I think I will use my executive decision making right now and just say we come to a close. We've gotten a lot of good information out there. This is the most I think our community has heard collectively from management, players, and head of DE&I ever. And we're inviting you to come on back next Wednesday. They're going to do the same thing again. And it's a series called Walk With Us. Your panelists this morning have all been listed on screen. Isu Ma'at, thank you very much, the newest member of the Orlando Magic and heading up our diversity team. Of course, Michael Carter Williams, he has been the baller with it all. He's been out there using his voice, and we thank you. Alex Martins has been with the Orlando Magic longer than I. And that's a pretty long time, but he's been making the decisions and turning with the tide, and that's a good thing. And Steve Clifford, thank you for the energy that you bring to the Orlando Magic and the willingness to put yourself out there with all that we don't know and all that we're willing to learn. I'm Monica May. It's been my pleasure to host this afternoon for you. And again, we're hoping that you will come back again with us same time next week for more Walking With Us. It's our way of saying we're celebrating Black History Month, and the Orlando Magic are certainly glad to have you along with us. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Monica.
Appreciate it. Thank you.